Dragon Ball fans, I told you I'd be back. And so I am, with a new series I hope you will all enjoy. Dragon Ball Dissection. As the name implies, well, no, I will not be taking a knife to any of the characters from the series, but, as it might also imply, I will be putting the entire series under extreme scrutiny for review and analysis. I love Dragon Ball. I love all of it. But that doesn't mean there aren't elements deserving of criticism, and I won't be pulling any punches. So if you like your Dragon Ball reviews to be completely glowing and devoid of negative comments, tread cautiously. Obviously, what I would like to do is encourage the discussion and debate of different opinions, and that's what these will be, opinions, not an authoritative list of what is objectively good and bad in Dragon Ball. And you obviously do not have to agree with any of this. I'm not actually going to be doing any reviewing in this video. This video exists so I can lay out my plans, goals, and methods, so hopefully I won't have to be explaining this in the comments section of every video. First off, this is probably going to be a long series, not something to be finished in a single video. If you're here for my other videos, fear not, I won't be doing this series all at once. The next part of Batman should be up soon, but I just moved and am busy settling into a new place. This series will be updated periodically in between other videos. So, if I'm going to be reviewing Dragon Ball, I want to get as close to the source as possible. While trying to avoid the dreaded C word, what is Dragon Ball in its purest form? Well, as far as I'm concerned, that's the original manga or comic series drawn by Toriyama Akira in Weekly Shonen Jump from 1984 to 1995. That decision has a few consequences for this series. First and foremost, it means that I will not be covering any material exclusive to the television adaptations in my analysis. That doesn't reflect my opinion of that material. Remember how I just finished buying every single Dragon Ball Z Dragon Box? But it's just if you were doing, say, an analysis of the events in the Harry Potter universe, you'd most likely be covering the continuity put forth in the books rather than the movies. That also doesn't mean that I might not mention anime-exclusive elements just for fun, but it won't be considered part of my analysis. There is one element exclusive to the television series that does seem to briefly tie into the manga storyline. Most of you probably know what I'm talking about, but we'll cross that bridge when we come to it. That also means we will not be covering Dragon Ball GT in this series, as it is a sequel exclusive to the Dragon Ball Z television series and not a part of the Dragon Ball manga. So please don't tell me that I forgot some plot point or that something I am criticizing is adequately explained in an episode of the TV series. If I don't mention it, it doesn't mean that I'm not aware of it. But if it's not a part of the manga continuity, it will be, for all intents and purposes, ignored. As an aside, it is also worth mentioning that there is no such thing as a Dragon Ball Z manga. That title is exclusive to the television series, as is the idea of it being split into two series. The manga carried the name Dragon Ball from Goku's first appearance as a child, all the way to Goku flying away with Oob. American fans who've collected Viz's manga might be shaking their heads at me right now for how wrong I supposedly am, but it's true. Since in America it was the TV series that was first released and first came to popularity, Viz followed suit when they translated the manga, slicing off the first two chapters of Volume 17 and calling it Dragon Ball Z Volume 1, and then releasing them simultaneously as two series. But they're not two series. Dragon Ball Z is not a sequel manga to Dragon Ball, and Dragon Ball is certainly not a prequel to Dragon Ball Z. It's just one series and will be treated as such for the purposes of this dissection. It should also go without saying, but I will say it anyway, that I won't be including any terminology or alterations from any foreign language adaptation, such as, say, the Funimation English dub of the television series. Since I'm not covering the TV series at all, that should be a no-brainer, but since that terminology is the most popular and well-known in many English-speaking nations, I do feel compelled to make that perfectly clear. Again, I'm only looking at the source material here, so any decisions a Texas-based dubbing company makes is, well, irrelevant. The same goes for Viz's English translation of the manga. While I will be using it as a visual reference, since that's all I have, although if anyone would like to lend me copies of the Japanese manga for the purposes of this series, it will be wonderfully appreciated, but any Viz-isms will also be ignored. If you can't stand someone referring to some of the characters or attack names differently than Funimation's dub, and feel the irresistible urge to complain about it in the comments, maybe this review isn't for you. That's not to say dub fans aren't welcome here. Everyone's welcome here, but I just want to be clear right off the bat how I'm doing this. I won't spend time making fun of the English dub if you don't flood my comments with inane weeaboo accusations. Deal? After all, I'd rather have you debate me on my opinions of the series rather than the merits of dubbing versus original language. Especially when we're not even talking about a spoken word version of the series. So with all that out of the way, here comes the most important part. It's a pretty well-known fact that Toriyama did not generally plot much of the series out in advance. And that's okay. It gave Dragon Ball its sense of fun. When done well, the story had a great spontaneity and excitement, and when not done well, the story meandered, plot points vanished, and he wrote himself into corners. But despite the lack of planning, Dragon Ball's story is comprised of large story arcs. Some are easier to divide than others, some lead directly into the next story arc, sometimes within the same chapter. Different people will have different opinions of these divisions of story arcs, or sagas, or whatever you want to call them. I remember as a teenager always thinking that Funimation subdivided them way too much, and that was probably done to make it more manageable to collect the old DVD singles. I mean, seriously, a 7-episode Ginyu saga? What's the story there? Goku fights 3 bad guys and, well, that's the end. But even the Japanese sources divided up too much for my taste. Considering how they function as stories with clear beginnings, middles, and endings, I feel Dragon Ball is most seamlessly divided into 10 separate stories. 1. The Hunt for the Dragon Balls arc. 2. The 21st Tenkaichi Budokai arc. 3. The Red Ribbon Army arc. 4. The 22nd Tenkaichi Budokai arc. 5. The Piccolo Daimyo arc. 6. The 23rd Tenkaichi Budokai arc. 7. The Saiyan arc. 8. The Frieza arc. 9. The Cell arc. And 10. The Majin Buu arc. And it is on the basis of these story arcs that I will be conducting my review. I will analyze each story arc as a separate entity and on its own merits. How its storyline developed, how its characters were utilized, and how its devices would or would not impact Dragon Ball as a whole. And since I have them divided up into 10 story arcs, I'm going to do something that should gain me more than a few enemies. I will rank each arc on a scale from 1 to 10. This is not an objective rating of good or bad, as I enjoy every single Dragon Ball arc for different reasons, but just how I feel each arc measures up in comparison to every other story arc in the series. So when we meet again, we will enter the world of expanding staffs, monkey tails, hoi poi capsules, and more panties than you can shake a shape-shifting pig at, when we tackle the Hunt for the Dragon Balls arc. See you then!